Now, unlike part one, where we had many, many accessories, what we have in part two, well, we have lots of food, lots of animals, and these were really important. I think a lot of people who just are starting to enter this field don't realize how the Neapolitan artists worked very, very hard to create in the same terracotta material or carved wood material that they were using to create accessory pieces and animals. Oh my gosh, you could just collect the Neapolitan animals, and I'm going to be showing you some as we go along. They are so extraordinary. They're just fabulous. And then the foodstuffs. There are many groups of foodstuffs here, baskets of foods, vegetables, just wonderful things that are sculpted. And this was an important part of it. And there were artists who were known for this particular feature. One of the other things I'm just going to mention once, and then I may mention it or point some out as we go along. I really started to pay attention this time in cataloging. See, the more you get into something, the more you see different things, to the boots, to their legs. And I think probably there has not been enough study done on this. When you think of how the early French dolls were made or the German dolls were made in their beginning of their commercialization in the mid-1800s, it's known, for example, in France that the heads were made one place, the bodies were made another, the wigs were made another, the costumes were made another, then brought together. That was true to some extent in Germany, not as much as it was in France. Well, that was also true with the Neapolitan dolls. There were little studios, little workshops in Naples that specialized in the production of boots, for example, carved wooden boots. Another studio that would specialize in the production of carved wooden hands. And I want you to pay attention as we go along. I'm going to point some out in particular. For example, I noticed, and as we go through, I may forget to point it out on certain ones, but as we go through, look at the hands of the different figures and notice how they worked very, very carefully to try to use hands that were age appropriate to the head. There's one older man over here, I'm going to show you later, and he has the most wonderful aged hands, wrinkled aged hands, and it's just completely compatible with the sculpture that he is showing. And then also the shoes, and I think someone should get more into an analysis of the boots and the shoes that are painted on these, because someone might, over a period of time, be able to discover, yes, there was this particular studio on this particular street during this time period that specialized in shoes, and this was a work from that studio. In this, one of the wonderful things for collecting Neapolitan dolls is there is so much left to explore and discover, only starting to do attribution to particular artists because they were never signed. And so the most of the attribution can be done only in two ways. It can be done by a comparison of the type of sculpture, of the expression, of the stylization, comparing that to other works that were signed by them in the fields of silver or carved wood or marble statuary. Because remember, many of the famous celebrated sculptors of Naples during this early 1700s were also employed during their spare time and frankly to raise a little extra money for their pocket, because they were starving artists in some cases, even though they were celebrated, but they were employed to design and make Neapolitan figures, many of them closely resembling their more celebrated artworks. They didn't often put their name on them because they didn't want to be associated with something that might be considered not quite as fine art as their marble pieces, for example. But there's so much of that to discover then. So I started to say there's only two ways we can now identify who they are. One is by comparing them with their fine artworks, and the other is simply by finding documents in the archives, and that has started to happen in Italy. Finding a document in an archive that would say of Celebrano, for example, created X and X Neapolitan figures under commission for Mr. So-and-so, and here's a list of what he made. And so we can start to try to do it that way. But for someone who likes research, who likes study, and unfortunately for me, who speaks Italian, which would be a big benefit, so much fun to go into to explore this field. I'm kind of jealous. I wish I knew Italian. Well, at any rate, what I can do is show you the pieces I have here. And I wanted to kind of give you variety. I noticed one of the categories that was very, very popular in part one of the Hannah Butka's collection, the Dallas Theater, were the royal figures. Now, remember, when the Neapolitan scenes were done, there were four major categories that appeared over time. One was the aristocracy, the royal scenes of the kings and the aristocracy and the rich people in their lavish settings and backgrounds with silken costumes and jewelry. That was one of the settings. Another was the marketplace. The marketplace was a popular one. I'm going to show you one of those later today. And the marketplace would be filled with the vendors who were selling the foods, with little children, with animals, with people hawking products back and forth, all scenes of a busy marketplace. And as someone pointed out to me the other day that saw one of these, he said, wow, I've been watching that series on TV, the Corfu series. I forgot the total name of it. And it looks just like a marketplace in Italy today. And yes, it does. Yes, they do. They're just so fabulous. Another scene was, of course, the nativity scene itself. And a fourth scene was the countryside, the peasants, the sheep herders, the bagpiper, all of these type of things. So very, very important. And then still the final scene, the tavern. The tavern was always there. A tavern, not necessarily like a drinking tavern, but the place where people gathered for a great meal and to enjoy the camaraderie of their friends. And you find people from all of these scenes, because every great Neapolitan village or setting that were captured in museums or homes would have people from all of these genres. At any rate, one of the things that people really like to have, and I had a lot of people ask me after Theater One, what about the props you're showing in the background? Well, the props are all being offered in this auction, and this is one of the greatest. Now, I will tell you that some of the props are antique, and some were pieces that Hannah Butka's had commissioned for her by local artists, and quite frankly, except the fact that the ones she had commissioned are very light and easy to carry, it's kind of hard to tell them apart. But this is one of the antique ones, and this is an extraordinary piece. It's ruins, and that's what you found in Naples at the time. So this wonderful piece, someone wanted to know that those palm trees come out. Yes, they do. They're just stuck in the back. You don't have to have the palm trees if you don't want them. They were original, but that's to your choice. And it's a wonderful ruins, and it's a great setting to put whatever people you wanted to have here. We have the wonderful man in the helmet, and I wanted to show you because, again, every time I see somebody that has really great boots, I'm going to show you. And look at his boots, the little figural designs on the front of them. The pieces mostly have their original paint, but they are 300 years old, and so to assume that they haven't been had a touch-up at some point or other in their 300 years, well, probably would be naive on our part. So I more look to the sculpting, and what I love is when they are done to such detail that you can see the wrinkles in the boots, you can see where they're overlapped at the top, you can even see the muscular design on the back of the legs where the stockings are. But I love this fellow because I thought his boots were completely appropriate to his costume. His helmet does come off, and he has wonderful hair. He's a handsome guy. Okay, and then we have the other figures, and I love, by the way, the two, stand up here now, the two Asian musicians, because I want you to see their hair. The top knot hair, the shaved head with just the top knot curl, was a very stylized design that was used. And while you may think at first glance that these are the same doll, they are so very definitely not. Not only is the sculpting different, but as you can see, the hair is different, the mustache is different, and look at them in profile, and you'll see, is that a good profile right there? And you will see that the shape of the nose, they're completely different figures. They're so wonderful. I love the way when they did the painting of them also, they managed to have like the shading where it's not just a bald head and the head is the same complexion as the face, but you have the beginning of like the shading of the hair starting to grow in on the back of the head, the darkening. And then we move over here to this extraordinary group of what I call the aristocracy and where to begin. We're just going to keep scanning over the different figures while I just talk to you about some of them. I was mentioning hairstyles and hair designs on women, and I want you to notice her because this is not a cap on her. Not a cloth cap. This is a sculpted cap that is part of her design, and it is absolutely wonderful. One of the great things about all of these figures, this is our cover lady in the catalog, is that many of them are holding these wonderful accessories that are such absolute treasures in and of themselves. Little silver boxes, which was a real particular skill and talent and artistry in Naples at the time. And we have 3 women right here that are holding these wonderful little miniature boxes. And we have all of the aristocracy in their wonderful costumes. We have the woman at the back who is in this wonderful, really, she appears to be the queen of the whole court. And she and her little friend standing next to her was one of my favorites of the whole auction. He does not have painted shoes. Look, he's barefoot. I just love him. Great expression. Look at the detail of sculpting. His chubby little neck, little chubby fat rolls in his neck. Wonderful, wonderful expression. Indentation under the eyes, little double chin, beautiful shading of his complexion. And then his little boy, muscular legs. He is very, very precious. I'm going to lay him down right here. And let me see, who else in here? I just love this man. I love this man right here. He is a very handsome man. And let's take a look at his painted sandals as well. So there is some degree of sculpting of the sandal strings, and then the painting, and then the gold tassels. That's all sculpted and painted on him. And very, very handsome, beautifully trimmed, shaved beard. Let's see him from the back as well. Look at his wonderful costume. Oh, he is a prize. And oh, I almost forgot to show this one to you. This is very unusual. I didn't see this on anything else. Again, very Grecian looking in his demeanor, the style of his hair. You almost think of it like a Grecian god, but look at his costume. That is metal. That is a metal shield on his chest, pressed metal. Very, very different than anything I've seen, and very unusual. So a rare little piece. And this is a prince. And he has a top dot, a blue hairband, and check out the boots. Very beautifully done. I would have thought it was a woman, but I guess it's not because of the shoes. But I don't know. I could be wrong. So I wanted to step over here for just a moment. I just wanted to very quickly show you something. We have 3 wonderful oil paintings in this auction. Hannah Butkus realized that the oil paintings that depicted the Neapolitan scenes were a great accessory item to have in her home, because it really kind of emphasized. And so here we have the tambourine player, and here we have a tambourine player Neapolitan figure in this wonderful little size. Just absolutely great, holding her tambourine and having the very characteristic red snood and the shawl. And we'll turn it around. You can see her all the way around. Very beautiful. And standing next to her is this wonderful, again, a very different kind of figure. Look at this hair. Look at this face. Very completely different. And I think the hands beautifully chosen because they're very delicate fingers, and he's a musician, so rightfully so. So this is a lovely woman talking about sculpted hair pieces. And again, she is holding her own little treasure chest, her silver treasure chest. And she has a sculpted crown. Now, I noticed when I was cataloging her that there were 3 little holes there. So I would think that at some point, originally, there might have been jewels in there, and they might have been real jewels, but they are no longer there. And it was actually known at one point that many of the pieces that had been embedded with fine gemstones and real jewels, when they needed money, they had been raided to get these stones. I don't know if that's the case with her or not, but she is very, very beautiful, and that's rare sculpted tiara crown and beautiful boots as well. And then another of the architectural settings that are being sold, and in this case being sold with the 2 small Neapolitan figures and the various accessories, but a really nice one, a very heavy one, an original one. So an excellent example. And then finally up here in the front, before we switch to another field, I want to show you this because we tend to always think of Neapolitan figures as being big, and I know some of you had said, oh, I don't know where I would put one in my house. So I wanted to show you, here's a little setting, and look, you could have this wonderful group, the women holding their armful of lambs. We have another woman, we have 2 women with these blue sculpted caps, and I wanted to show you because, again, they're variation of the caps. One of them is, this one is holding the little lamb, and this one is not, and the painting on them is completely different. They have wonderful faces for these intricate little figures. I love this little guy right here. He's very, very special. Let me turn him so you can see him a little better. I'll tip it back because sometimes the camera can pick his face up better that way. He's wonderful. You can see how small he is. You see my hand there. And then here is perhaps his grandpa. And then when I talked about accessories, I wanted to point out to you there are so many wonderful pieces, and I spent hours trying to research some of these. This is a very intricately done little wooden piece, and I have finally come to the conclusion, and I cataloged it this way, but please correct me if you know I'm wrong, and I might well be, as a butter churn, as a variation of a simple butter churn. So let me know. But the auction is filled with these kind of wonderful little treasures. And then finally, some pieces that were selling the setting with a figure and with accessories. And here is one of the wonderful fountains that all of you had such a fascination with it the last time. You loved the fountains. And here is one. This is one of the original props, one of the antique props from one of the early Neapolitan settings, with the man and the vegetables and a bird in a basket. So a great piece right there.